Hey everyone, I am sitting here in my den because I needed to do a intro for this video and I did not want to get up and change clothes or fluff myself. So you are getting the true me, just sitting here relaxing in my den. Now we are going to be doing a full video today and it is including some new techniques that I hope you guys are going to enjoy. You all will have to let me know in the comments below if you enjoy this type of video and if you'd like to see more like it. There are going to be 2 videos that came out of this upcycle because I am doing this really cool box that includes some items in it and I didn't want to make the video longer than it needed to be. So watch for the link below in the description box for the video that goes with this video. How many times have I said video in this video? Anyways, thank you guys so much for all the love for my last video and all the comments. Thank you for all of the purchases that you guys sent to Aunt Bee's Attic. They are so excited, and Autumn Sage's creators was so excited for all of the purchases you all purchased from her new paper line. So thank you so much for that. And Beth over at Aunt Bee's Attic was so ecstatic. You all, you have just made her and her daughter's day, which helps work with her. So thank you again so much for that. All right, now let's get on to this video. Let me know, is this a Dark and Moody with a side of Cottage Core, or is this Cottage Core with a side of Dark and Moody, or Dark Academia? That is a new word coined for Dark and Moody. So let me know. Comment below. So this first project is a really easy one. We're going to be working on this beautiful ornate frame. It's a gold in color. It's very heavy. It feels like resin, but it's really heavy, so not sure. So someone had tried to fix this, and I'm going to undo their work and fix it myself. What I'm doing here now is I'm using my heat gun to reheat the glue that's on here. It looks like it is hot glue and possibly some other kind of glue. So if you use your heat gun, you can get this glue to start melting again. And then I'm going to take a very large scraper and use that to scrape what I can off the hot glue. And there's also some kind of older dried yellow glue under here as well. I wanted to leave this in here to show you, if you don't already know, that there are ways to fix things that maybe need to be fixed for an upcycle. Now this glass for the frame is glued in, so I'm having to be very careful around this. Even though it looks like I'm just really jabbing like crazy, it is sped up, but I'm being very careful not to break my glass because it's glued in, and there is, you know, I don't want to worry about trying to take that out and put it back in to keep it in place, because I feel like it was probably glued in from the factory as well. I'm not sure. So this actually turns out really pretty. Once I get the glue off of here, we are going to do some sanding to get it very smooth, or as smooth as possible. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint the back of this with some coal black infusion. I'm showing you here, there is some issues with this cardboard backing. It does have some dried glue on it, which does not seem like hot glue. It's more of a chippy glue. So I am just going to sand that off and try to repair this as well by gluing the broken piece together, and then also attaching this to the back of the frame with some liquid nails and some hot glue. I was actually trying to find my JB Weld, and I couldn't, and I found liquid nails, but I do end up finding my JB Weld, which I needed it, and you'll see that what I use that for. I'm taking my time and brushing this JB Weld, or I'm sorry, this liquid nails just on the cardboard. I don't want this to seep too much outside of the frame, so I'm leaving places in between to use hot glue, because I'm going to use hot glue again, just like the original person who tried to fix this. The key is going to be with the hot glue is to make sure that you don't put too much so it doesn't seep outside and leave a very thick base, because then you won't have a nice seal in between the frame and this cardboard backing. And believe it or not, this liquid nails and the hot glue does end up holding this and holding it very nicely, and it looks really good. It really depends on if you want to take the time to fix something like this. I do clamp this and let it dry, and once it dries, I'm going to use that Fusion Coal Black to touch the whole back of this up, including the velvet. I paint black velvet on the backs of frames quite often with just black paint, and it really turns out nicely. The reason that I'm taking time with this is because not only was this a very costly frame, but as you can see, we're going to be putting Mona Lisa in this, and boy doesn't she deserve a beautiful frame. I'm going to keep this in my office for a while and then eventually put this in my booth. I think I paid $3.99 for this frame, which was well worth it. I don't really like paying more than $1, but you know, this one was probably a high cost frame, and it's definitely Mona Lisa worth. So what I'm going to do now is, there was some very weird orangey red on this frame that I didn't care for. So I'm just going to take, I think, the Grecian rub and buff and touch over those places that was kind of red. I'm leaving the original patina that's white on there along with the dark colors and the original gold. Okay, on to this next video. Don't forget the photos will be at the end of this video for you guys to see. So I have this candlestick here, and I have this light fixture cover, which I thought looked like a beautiful cloche with the like seed bubbles in it. So we're going to marry these two pieces together, and I'm going to use some junk. I pulled a little box of junk out of parts. I'm starting off with this brass. This was actually a brass lamp that came apart in multiple pieces, and I took it apart and saved it. I end up using one of the pieces as my cloche top. You'll see coming up. This brass piece fit down in there so perfect, but now I'm just testing out different toppers on it just to see which one that I want to be like my steeple, I guess I'm calling it, or finial, my finial. So you can see I do end up going with the original, I'm pretty sure the original finial that went on the top of this brass lamp, or it's a finial regardless. So I end up using it, and we end up using some JB Weld to put this together as well. Now with the JB Weld, you just squirt it out together however much you think you might need. It comes out in equal parts, and then you take something and you mix those together very well so they can activate. It does smell, so I would use this definitely in a ventilated area and try not to touch it with your fingers. Once you let this dry, this stuff does not move. So I use it on the base of the finial to attach it to the part that's going to go inside the opening of this cloche or light fixture, whichever one you want to call it, or globe, light fixture globe. I do add a little bit of hot glue just to give it that temporary hold. And I put that on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the larger part going into the globe. Now I don't use hot glue on the larger part because it's sitting very nicely inside of that globe, so I just let it dry on its own without using a temporary glue. What we're going to do here is, since we want these pieces, or I want these pieces to match, I'm going to use some waxes. Now I will have my waxes and other lists of products down in the description box below. I'll have links for those. Some of these are from my Amazon store, and then some of these are from Aunt Bee's Attic. Now let's not forget, Aunt Bee's Attic does have great prices with $9 flat rate shipping. You cannot beat it. A lot of companies are charging $25 or more just to ship a few items. She does not. So what I'm doing here is, on the brass finial part, I want it to have some black, so I'm using black soot in the Finnabair waxes to kind of darken that down. We're going to go back and do a couple more steps to this, but you'll see in the end it just looks so good. It almost gives it a rubbed oil bronze look with more bronze or gold than rubbed oil, if that makes sense. Once I get a good coat on here, I am going to let that dry and move on to the base. Just remember, when you're working with these waxes, if you rub too hard, they're not going to stay on this slick surface. So you kind of want to pat and have a bit thick on your finger to get them to stay. Once they start drying and curing, they're not going to come off after they do cure. So we're going to move on to the bottom of this, and how we're going to start it out is, we're going to start it out with the rub and buff. I think it's the Grecian gold. I just hold it up to whichever one, or I just hold them up. I have a set of 3 that came from Amazon, and I just see which one matches the gold on the finial that I like the best. We're kind of doing opposite here. We are trying to get these two to look alike, even though they're opposite colors. So with the base, we're going to start out and add the gold, the Rub and Buff gold on it, then go back in with some of the black soot on top of the gold, and then on the finial we are starting out with the brass base with black soot. Once that dries some, we're going to go back with the gold and even add more black soot to it, just till I get it the way that I want it. It does not take as long as it sounds, I promise. Like I said, now we are going to move back to that finial and add some of that black soot over top of the, we're going to be adding the gold over top of the black soot that has dried some. Again, once I put that gold on, if I do get a little heavy-handed, I'm adding some black soot over top of it. Now you all will have to let me know what you think about these two. Here they are together without anything in them. Do they look like they match now? Now don't forget, this cloche will be full of neat things, and the photos will be at the end of this video. Alright, this next one is another one of those super easy ones. I painted this with some Fusion and Coal Black. It was a black frame already, but it had a little bit of dents and dings. I didn't mind those, but I really wanted it to have the hand painted look. So I'm just showing you that that's what I'm going to be painting it with. Now it's almost dry, and I have this piece of artwork that came from Temu. It is a canvas print of these beautiful roses, kind of a dark and moody look. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that in that frame. Now I do end up adding some gold around the edges of the Rub and Buff to make it tie in with this whole vignette, and you'll see that at the photos in the end. This one was really simple. So the piece that you're seeing so the frame was $1, and then the Temu piece was like $169, and then you got 30% off of that. So this piece ended up being about a $230, $250, and I'm going to put this in my booth for probably $12.95. All right, we are going to have a little bit of fun with this next piece. I want to show you guys some techniques that you may not already know. This frame is so gorgeous, not the way it is. However, I was so attracted to the landscape of the frame as well as this metal piece at the top. So I went ahead and picked this up. I think I had to pay like $3, maybe $4, I don't know. But I had to have it because I knew we could do something really cool with it. Now it looks like someone had did their own little artwork here with some faux leaves glued onto the backing of the frame. Oh, I paid $5 for it. I see that now. But like I said, I had to have it. I knew this frame would fit in with our whole Dark and Moody with a little bit of cottage core, or cottage core with a side of Dark and Moody. So I went ahead and picked this out of my junk pile to put a bird in it. So we're going to use book pages again. You all don't forget, book pages are definitely your friend. There's a lot of artwork in them, and some of them actually have what's called plates, like a glass plate, but it's technically a book plate. So it's meant to be artwork in the book, and they don't have anything on the back of them. However, the pieces I'm using, I think, do have wording on the back. Maybe not this bird, though. All right, so I got this out of a bird book, and what I did with this frame was I painted it the coal black infusion to put my black bird in it. I just was kind of trying to go with the black and gold frames all together. Now, I'm not going to fully cover this because I want to leave a little bit of that gold on the edges of the inner, because we're going to add gold back to this, and it's going to be the same Rub and Buff. I do go ahead and slightly dry brush some of that black over this kind of rusty piece at the top so that it'll look more cohesive. All right, so I found this bird, and it was sitting on this branch, and I thought this would look so gorgeous. A lot of the kind of Dark and Moody or even cottage core has usually either statue, a person, and some type of animal, whether it's a bird or maybe a cat. I don't know. It's usually got a few things: a country scene or some type of scenery, some type of animal, and a person or a statue, and sometimes letters or numbers or symbols. So we've got our Mona Lisa, now we've got our bird, and we are going to have, and flowers. Some of them are flowers. So I'm just going to cut this out. I've placed it where I wanted it to fit in my frame, how I wanted the branch to fall. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. But you'll see the white background is not working for me. So we're going to change that. Don't forget, you can change just about anything. So I've always loved paper crafting. I am a huge Tim Holtz fan. I've learned many techniques over the years, and I want to share some with you. A lot of you all already may be paper crafters and love mixed media and Tim Holtz fans yourself, but I'm going to go ahead and show maybe some people that aren't. I've pulled out my distressed inks. I've got my Mona Lisa and her beautiful dreamy background there to kind of go by. I'm not going to make it just like that because obviously I want it to be different, but also kind of go in the same color family. So what I'm doing is the pieces that we cut off of that page are going to be my practice sheets to see what colors I want to use. And then I pulled out the distress in the regular inks, and then I pulled out the oxides. The oxides are more of a creamy, consistent, they are more of an opaque versus a clear. So I'm going to try those first, and then we'll try the regular inks on another piece to see which one I go with. Basically, what I'm doing is taking a sponge dauber, dabbing it into the different inks, which technically you should use a new dauber for each ink, but that's a whole other story. I am using this dauber to blend the inks together to see what colors it is that I want to use to add to this bird. So I've done my oxide sample, and now I'm going to work on just the regular distress inks that are not the oxide based, and then I'm going to choose which one I think that I would like the best to go with the bird. I do speed up my videos quite a bit. Don't forget you can change the settings to slow them down in the bottom right hand corner on YouTube. Also, if you like this kind of video, which adds paper crafting as well as more mixed media, learning how to do techniques, go ahead and comment below and let me know if that's something you're more interested in. I love paper crafting. I just feel like that home decor is more of a prosperous YouTube channel for me, but I would love to combine the two and would love your vote on that. So comment below and let me know. I have decided that I'm going to go ahead and go with the oxides to make my colors, and now I've got my bird there, and we're going to get started on that. We're going to do the same thing, except for we're going to go all around the bird with these inks. If you get some of this on the bird, on top of the bird, it's okay. It will just make him look or her look a little cloudy, but you can take a baby wipe and wipe it back off until these completely dry and set. They are wipeable. Also, one thing to know about the distress inks, they are still water soluble even after they dry. So keep that in mind when you're using these types of inks for anything that could be that you may want to be permanent. This is going to be behind glass, so it doesn't matter to me. It's not going to get reactivated with water. I feel like I have the white area around the bird toned down enough to fit in with the look that I'm going. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that down and get it placed inside of this gorgeous frame. I'm going to add some of that rub and buff to all of the edges of this and the metal piece on the top to give it a little bit of gold to match with the other pieces that we've done. You'll have to let me know which one is your favorite so far. Alright, so the last project coming up is going to be a cool sort of a pharmacy box. I really was thinking about doing a apothecary, botanical, herbal type box, but it kind of ended up more towards a prescription medical medicine. So it's this, actually it's a very cool box, don't get me wrong. I love the like 90s maybe paint job on it. It was $5, so we're going to turn this into a little story. It's going to be a male doctor's box. And the first thing I'm going to do is take off these knobs. They're just little faux wooden ones, and they've got these little nail, like, I'm not sure what they're called, but I'm pulling them out, and I'm going to replace these with screws and knobs. If you guys can't tell already, I do have a small obsession with boxes, so I have quite a bit with drawers and different doors and things in my stash that I plan on trying to get to in the future. And this one is going to be available in my Etsy store once this video is uploaded. So go over onto my Etsy store and check this one out. If it doesn't sell, I'm going to put it in my antique booth. I figured after the last box that I made and had requests to purchase it, I would just go ahead and put this one in my Etsy shop. It'll be linked in the description box below. So we are painting this one with a base color of the Fusion Coal Black paint. And the reason I went with the Fusion on this one is because it has a built-in sealer, and I want the base of this to be black because we are going to be doing some aging on this. And I don't want it to go all the way back to this blue, and the black Fusion paint is going to do that for us. It's going to seal it up and be a great base coat. I'm also using one of DIY Debbie's Design Diary brushes, her new brush line. Aunt Bee's Attic also has these brushes, I cannot speak tonight, you guys. Pardon me. But anyways, if you want any of these products, don't forget, I'll have the link in the description box below. If you go through that link, I do get a small percentage towards products to make these videos. So go on over and check out Aunt Bee's Attic. We are going to be using some of Roycyled papers today in this one. Now, Royce has just released 12 new papers. Get ready for fall and Christmas and some even more interesting papers added to her already wonderful existing line. Aunt Bee's Attic also has all those new papers. Again, the link will be in the description box below. Once we get this painted black, we're going to go in. I totally had a different vision for this box than what it ended up. And I don't know if you guys are like that. I know a lot of you all that watch this channel also watch a lot of other channels, and you all do your own crafting. As I see over on my Facebook page, I have a Facebook page now. Go on over there like that. Post some of your pictures. I've been getting people's photos from what they're making. I've been able to see their photos over there. They have been commenting with pictures, and I love it. So go on over there and like that page. I'm also on Instagram. You get sneak peeks on both places, plus new content on Instagram, but you can share the photos on Facebook, on my Facebook business page, okay? Eventually, I might make a Facebook group. Right now, I'm just holding my horses and trying to keep the things that I have going together and up to date with working full time. So I do appreciate the grace that you guys give me on these videos. All right, so back to this box. I'm pulling out the products I'm going to be using on this box, which is going to include the DIY Sandy Blonde, DIY Prairie Gray, DIY Weathered Wood, and I do end up using Salt Wash, some of Fusion's Bayberry paint, and some of this Dixie Dirt. I picked up this Dixie Dirt from an antique booth. It was like $3, I think, maybe $3, maybe $6. It was a dealer that was going out of business, and I really wanted to try some of it. So we're going to end up using most of these products on here. We're going to start out with the Salt Wash. We're going to mix it with some of the Prairie Gray because this needs some texture. It needs some texture to make it look like it's old and grungy, and it needs some texture to cover up some of the texture that's already on the piece from the original paint artwork. When I start out a project, I get out a lot of different items that I think I might use, and so I've got a lot of different papers out here from Royce, and then also from the new line that I just did in my last video, which was Autumn Sage. I'm also gotten some of my Jamie Ray Vintage. I think these are label stencils, and then also the Apothecary stencils. I don't end up using these label stencils, but I do end up using the Apothecary ones. And again, those can be found at Aunt Bee's Attic. And like I said, her prices are great compared to other sellers. Okay, so I'm trying to lay out exactly how I want to do this piece, and I do end up using as my main thing, the Grungy Subway by Roycyled, and then her Harlequin pattern, which is from her catalog piece. You'll see right there. When I first started this piece out, I had every intention of making this seem like it was 6 boxes instead of 3, which meant 2 on the top, middle, and 2 on the bottom with 6 knobs. But I did change my mind. But you'll see here that I am painting a line down the center and kind of outlining the boxes, which plays to my advantage because it really does end up looking good once we add everything to this that we're going to add. And on the front of this, I also only added 1 coat of the paint because I generally thought I was going to be covering the whole front of the boxes up with decoupage paper, but I didn't, and it didn't show anyways. You will see here the knobs were very off center on the original, so I had to go back and actually use a ruler, you all. I rarely measure, but I did for this one at least a little bit, just to kind of get the true center of this box where I wanted my line to start. Once I got the squares painted, then I decided I would try to lay out what I thought I wanted on each piece. And again, none of it really ends up looking like I thought it was going to in my head, but I do end up loving how it looks. And how I did this, laying these pieces on here to get them stay, I used just a little tape roller, like double-sided tape and one of those little tape machines, so that it would stick, so I could kind of, you know, make it lay there, because this box was standing up, and I have it kind of flat, but not flat enough for where the decoupage paper was going to stay on it. So I used that to put on the back of the decoupage paper so they would stay for me to look at. The reason I'm doing this in the beginning is because I want to see what the front of my boxes, how I want them to be finished or complete, because I'm going to add the grunge and the paint around the artwork. So the artwork's going on first, and then the grunge and the other paints are going on last, if that makes sense, because I want to be able to blend it on top of these papers. So I've ended up using the Sandy Blonde to do my stenciling because I thought that it matched the Roycyled paper very well, and I'm going to be using a couple of the Jamie Ray Vintage Apothecary stencils, but I'm only using pieces. I'm using Druggist and Medicine, and then just some street addresses off of some of the other ones. I do want to mention, I am showing in this video how I made this box. However, the items that are going inside of the box, I will have a separate video for that, because I feel like on my last video you all asked to see how certain things were made or curated, and it would just make this video too long. So there will be a separate video released on the whole making of this box, including what is going to be going in it. You will see what's going in it here on this one, but the making of it and the curating will be in a full-length video separately. Now that we have the front of the box partially completed, or at least the artwork on it, I'm going to go ahead and start adding the grunge to it. And what I've done is I've taken some of the Prairie Gray and mixed some salt wash in with it to kind of go around all of these pieces and add chunks of this to make it just have like someone had really dirty fingers every time they opened it, and then they would clean all around the knobs, but they wouldn't get the edges. I don't know if that makes sense, but so I do this first. I also forgot to mention that I do have DIY Summer Crush. I used some of that on this box. I really don't end up liking it, so I go back and cover most of that. Again, you'll see coming up. When adding this grunge, I go ahead and do it to all the sides and the back. I don't add it to the top yet because I'm not sure at this point what I want to do to the top of it. I do end up doing the same thing similar in the end when I decide not to add any artwork to it. I'm just taking a chip brush and kind of dabbing it. Like I said, I make sure I go around all the edges where it would be grabbed and just leave a little in that center. I don't know. It was just a random thing, trying to make it look random without leaving a bunch of brush marks. I end up adding this and letting this dry some, and then I go back in with the other colors. Once I get those done, then I go ahead and pull the boxes out and do the sides of them too, because I want, when you pull them out, at least the sides, for them to look that way. I don't do the back of the box or the insides of the box, and I'm being careful of not getting too much of where the box slides in and out, because we don't want that to be a problem once it does dry, that they don't slide in and out good. So with the DIY paint, you can wet blend, which means you can spray it and blend the colors together. What I did was I let all of the paint dry, and then I went back in with a baby wipe and smeared all of the colors together, which in return also smeared the colors onto the black. I sprayed it, but the paint was dry. Generally, when it's when you're painting it on wet and you want to blend colors, you'll spray while it's wet and blend. This, again, I let it dry, and then I went back in with a baby wipe and a water bottle and sprayed it, reactivating it, and smushed the colors together, if that's what you want to call it. What that did was it made the black paint that was not covered with paint get a overcast, if you will, to make it, the black paint, look aged as well. I do that on every piece, and then I go back on top of that with some black wax to dingy that blended paint up. Now, what this blending does is it blends the colors together, but it still leaves chunks separately versus just a very smooth blend that has multiple colors. We're still having some of the grunge and some chunks of the different colors of paint versus just smoothing them all out to make it shaded. I don't know if any of this makes sense, but I hope that this kind of gives you an understanding of how to blend those paint colors together without what I guess what I'm trying to say is I just dab them on in different little piles, and now the piles are kind of blended. Plus, wetting them and wiping back some takes away some color from those little piles, and then you have this just kind of grungy bits laying around that blend together, and then some's removed, so it's kind of like it's been cleaned over the years but still not gotten it all off. I hope that makes sense. Another thing I had to keep in mind when I was doing this, I did stencil using the DIY paint, so I didn't seal that, and what happened is I had to cover it with my hand instead of spraying it, which what I should have done was just sealed it, but I didn't want to take the time to seal it and let it dry. So I just sprayed around it and then blended it. Once I went back in with that black wax over top of it, it actually sealed it and it wouldn't smear anymore while I was working with it. So you do have to keep that in mind. I could have just stenciled it with a sealed paint or a paint with a built-in sealer, or I should have just sealed once I stenciled, but it's okay. It needed a little bit of blurriness and distressing to make it blend with the aged look. I also am using my sander to bring some of that black paint back in between. This was really just a experiment like I usually do to see how this, or to get the look that I want. I just play with it. I don't know if that makes sense. I know there's different techniques in here. I do try to explain them, and they also sometimes run together, the techniques do, to get the look that I want. So if I had to explain it, I would say I'm dabbing on the paint, I'm letting it dry, I'm going back and spraying it and wiping it together to blend it. Then I'm going to wax it with a dark wax and go ahead and wipe back even more and sand at the same time to not only get that paint blended, but some of it to come back off so you can see the black paint underneath, which makes it look aged instead of just all the paint sitting there together in a pile of like it's just been painted on. One of the great things about using, I think I'm using the black wax, it does tone all these colors down and give them the dirty look or the aged look that you want. But still gives you those orange and tan undertones. All right, so now we are getting there. I brought in this green bayberry color to give us a different tone because, like I said, I did put a lot of that orange on there and I just didn't care for it. So I'm bringing in this green to kind of tone down some of that orange and to give us a little bit more of a neutral color too to go along with this. I'm using this bayberry also to kind of give a shadow look around all of the squares that I put on the box to kind of tone them down. Now that I'm not really going to put all the different knobs, I'm just going to use 3 knobs. I do wipe some of it back because I don't really, want it to be like a complete shadow. But for right now, I'm just kind of going around and toning down the squares that I painted on the box. I'm going to do the same things on the edges and then on the back. And to let you know, this doesn't take a lot of time. I do get comments sometimes that, not negative comments, but the comments that people think this takes a lot of time. It doesn't. It's just a lot of layering. It's a lot of fun. Get out there, enjoy your supplies, your craft supplies, your art supplies, have fun, do what you love, and it flies by. It really does. It doesn't take hours to do this. All right, so once we get this green on, we kind of get it wiped back again to the way that we want it. We are going to end up sealing this. I do go ahead and seal it with a glossy, well, not glossy, but a shiny coat. And then I go back and dark wax it to tone down the shine. But the shine is what really brings out a lot of these, especially the DIY paints, and you'll see that coming up. Now we're going to add these cute little vintage knobs, and I'm using a drill to go ahead and drill a pilot hole to be able to put the screws in from the inside of the drawer. All right, so these are cute little antique knobs, but the one in the center is a little bit white for my taste, so we are going to take some of the Finnabair in the, I think it's antique bronze, and put around this. I don't show it on video, but I do go back right before I take photos and add a little bit of the gold rub and buff to all the edges of this box and the knobs. Not completely, just a hint here and there. You'll see in the photos coming up. So for the top, we are going to be using this bayberry color. What I end up doing is just putting a very light coat. I take a little bit of a damp paper towel, rub some of it back, and then I add some of this fusion paint in a similar color to weathered wood. Mix some of that Dixie dirt in because I really wanted to try it. I didn't have any of the salt wash stuff mixed up, and the salt wash is more of a white color. This Dixie dirt is a brown, so it fit perfect in with that paint. I go ahead and add some sandy blonde and then dark wax over it so it kind of blends with the other techniques we've done on this box. If you want to see what is in this box, go on over and check out the link in the description box below. Now let's get on to those photos. I hope you enjoy these, and I will see you in the next video.